Today, we're going to turn this 60 by 45 by 45 habitat vivarium into this. In this build, I wanted to make it have layers on the background, and I thought this would give the dart frog more space to explore instead of just having the bottom layer. Using these two massive bits of driftwood that I managed to pick up from an old tank that someone was selling, I made it look like a ramp going from the bottom right to the top. This is the main centerpiece of this build. We then spray foam the contact points to the glass and let it set before adding the next bit of driftwood. You can see on the left of the driftwood, it sort of looks like a little cave or an underpass. I did this in hopes that the dart frogs use it as a place to hide and have an area that is completely dark even if it's really sunny. I then added this little bit of plastic. It's a lid to a random tub that I had, and doing this means that I can attach the spray foam to that bit of plastic and make a platform between the two levels of wood. After that, I then added some cork bark to the right side of the tank so I can eventually add moss to it. I then spray foamed the whole left side of the tank and left this clear of any cork bark apart from the one little piece above the driftwood. Once everything was set, it was time to start cutting. This time I used a knife as I use really thick tree fern this time around, so the picking method that I used in the last video wouldn't really show up the tiny bits of texture or detail that the picking method does to the foam. It was then time to add the silicone and the tree fern fibre. I'll show what tree fern fibre we're using in a few minutes. Using this thick fern makes it easier to cover the silicone and adds more texture for the animal to climb on. You can really see how thick this tree fern fibre is compared to the last build. It's got a lot more like little twigs and it's just more fuller. Again, just giving it more texture, and it just looks so good once the full build is done. Getting the silicone under the bits of driftwood was actually quite tricky, but we got there eventually. And here's how it's looking pretty much done. You can see that we're adding more silicone to the platform area I was talking about and covering it with more tree fern fibre, and then we eventually put a little bit of substrate on top of that as well. It was then time to clean up all the tree fern fibre that fell off in preparation for the drainage layer. And just quickly before I forget, that's the tree fern fibre that we used. For the drainage layer, we used habitat clay balls. This stuff is super heavy, so for the bigger tanks, I'm going to try a different method in the future, but for a smaller tank like this, it does the job. Once I put the drainage layer down and the substrate barrier down, I then added the substrate. The substrate is BioLife Forest. This stuff is amazing. You can see as I'm pouring it in, it's not just like your simple substrate. This substrate has a small amount of moss, charcoal, bark, and loads of other things to help the plants thrive. After that, it was time to start planting. The first plant is a purple passion. I used this plant in my build before this one and I loved the colour, but I end up not using it in this build and I replace it for dragonstone. The next plants are parlour palm. These palms make it look like mini trees inside the tank and gives the tank that sort of jungle look. The more statement plant that I wanted to use was the Alocasia bambino. I like this because it has really cool thick stems and it has nice contrast to all the green in the tank. I then used Pilia depressa for under the wood, and also on top of the corner between the two layers of the driftwood. And lastly, I used some asparagus fern. I wanted a big tree in the corner of the tank and I thought this fern would do that perfectly. You can see in the background while I'm adding the mini isopods that I end up changing the purple plant like I said for the dragonstone. The purple plant in the middle didn't really work and looked completely out of place. The dragonstone in the middle, it kind of makes it pop more, and I can also grow moss in it as well. After adding the isopods, it was then time to add the springtails. These guys help break up any waste from the animals or plants and turn it into fertilizer for the plants. Once I gave it a quick spray down, it was then time to add the lights and the Monsoon System that Enclosure were kind enough to send out. So this is the light that we're going to be using with this Vivarium. It's the Enclosure Terra Sky. I wanted to give it a go and see how the plants grew with this light and also how the moss grew more importantly with this light. You can see there's nothing really in the packaging, it's literally just the remote and the light. The remote is what I'm going to focus most on though. It has loads of different features, including a thundering lightning feature, which I think is really cool. And yeah, it's super simple to set up. You just put it on top of the Vivarium, make sure the RI sensor is pointing towards you so that you can use the controller, and that's literally it. Next up to install is the Monsoon System. This just makes it a lot easier to spray, so you're not constantly having to change your bottle or constantly having to remind yourself to spray every single tank that you've got. Having a Monsoon System definitely helps. So this is what's in the box. It's literally just the tubes, the bit that you put the water in, and then the spray nozzles. It really is just that simple. I'd never used a Monsoon System before, so I was really excited to see how it actually worked, and I was actually pleasantly surprised. So the first thing that we did is we attached the pipes through this little hole that's in this Vivarium. This hole is actually really helpful for anything like this kind of stuff, so I'm glad that Habitat have this little hole at the top. You can see we just pipe it through until we got into a desired length that we need. And then it was really simple. I left these two glass bits at the front for this, and also you can actually replace them for mesh eventually if you want to do that, if you need more air. But I kept them on this little bit of glass and it works out perfectly. Then all we do is you put the top on, you put the filter in, and then you just fill it up with water. And then yeah, there you go, that's it working. And here's what it looks like with the Thunder and Lightning feature on and the Monsoon System going at the same time. It looks super cool. It just looks like a mini storm and I'm super happy with how this turned out. Well, a couple of weeks later, this is what the build's looking like. You can see that the moss is starting to turn green, which is perfect. This is exactly what I wanted because I didn't have live moss. I kind of had sort of a deader sort of moss going in there, but it is starting to grow overall. Unfortunately, the fern in the back is dying and I'm not sure why, but I'll try and fix it. Again, every other plant seems to be doing okay, just not the fern. And also you can see more moss is growing on the dragonstone, it's doing good. And there's now also someone new living in this vivarium. Hopefully I can find a female for him soon, as I do want to start breeding these frogs, so I can then do more tanks. Yeah, if you guys enjoyed the video, remember to hit subscribe and hit the like button and comment what you think I should do for the next build.